Hello, friends. Uh, it's what we call 10 a.m. at Microsoft, and which means about 10 after. And welcome to another exciting session of .NET API review. We have no red today, which I'm given to understand won't be true on Tuesday. But today we have no red. So cool. First up, add an array fill for multi-dimensional arrays 47213.
I guess I would nominate Tanner to talk about this.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Uh, Effectively, we have span fill today. Um, we've been iteratively adding APIs that provide better support for multi-dimensional arrays, both on the unsafe side and the safe side. Jan has put up multiple proposals for creating um, multidimensional spans more or multidimensional arrays more efficiently, as well as some other cases. And this is kind of just in that same general direction of it would be beneficial to uh, expose expose some new APIs on array that allow you to efficiently fill that multidimensional array with an entire with the same value. So it's just the span.fill API, but for multidimensional arrays.
Right. Do we know what's actually being proposed? Because
Yeah, the green bit
okay,
below.
because there was one with just a rank two array, and then there's one down here that takes array, and so okay.
Yeah, this is the kind of general purpose API. The um the one that's just two dimensional is uh, we'd end up having to expose many different overloads, and that's kind of against how the other APIs on array work.
Yeah, my question on that one was going to be, why do we care about rank two but not rank three or beyond?
Right.
Is this going to interfere with the existing fill method? For example, right now, let's say that I have a double array right now. I would call array.fill, pass in the double array as a first parameter, and then, I don't know, the number one or something. And it would be coerced at the compile or to the double value 1.0, and then everything would work correctly. Here, what overload would actually get called if I call array.fill of some double array, comma, one?
The existing generic overload that takes T array should still be called because it doesn't require the casting.
So there aren't any places where you imagine this might be a source breaking change thing.
I don't believe so. Because the existing fill API is generic and takes a T array, and so you either had an actual array type and it wouldn't work. It would just say incompatible. Or you have an actual T array, in which case that ends up being a better match than array because it doesn't require the downcast to the base type.
Right, but what if you're passing not the literal one, but an int value that's getting coerced into double? Now you would have two options, both of which require a downcast and get an exact t.
I would have to check.
That being um,
Oh, actually, this is I just checked it in SharpLab. It is, in fact, a compile error. Uh, the the example that I gave earlier, if you have a double array and you try passing in one, the compiler will now fail because it will say, I can't figure out which of these two overloads you meant to call.
I see. So if the t value has an implicit conversion, it gets ambiguous because then there's one
Yes.
conversion, so then it has to consider both.
That might still be okay because like it's a source breaking change at that point, but it's a source breaking change where the caller is explicitly told, hey, you need to make a change in order to disambiguate this. It's not like it suddenly calls a different method. So I
Right.
wonder if that would be acceptable. Because my primary concern, as you're probably getting, is that there would be a silent change to a behavior that the developer did not intend. And this clearly is not a silent change; it's a very noisy change, which would be okay.
right, but so I think we've determined that this shape is not good.
I didn't get that same conclusion here.
I mean, the code on screen would fail to compile after upgrading your .NET.
Right, but we take source breaking changes occasionally.
Not.
Yeah, it's a source break to overload resolution in an extremely rare case. Most people are going to be using span fill nowadays.
Like, generally, I feel like generally we're okay with the source breaking change when it's if you pass the literal null here, we may get confused and you'll have to deal with that. Not you had some code that involved, you know, typed variables and now it tells you, I'm sorry, I don't compile anymore.
It wasn't really a typed variable. You passed in one and had an implicit conversion.
No, not in my situation. I have a.
That's still an implicit conversion. You're relying on
No, but this
implicit
is
conversion being unambiguous.
That would fail the exact same way I just tested it.
Right, but this is sorry, this is a typed data conversion instead of a literal conversion. So.
Right, but it's still an implicit conversion. So like half the languages won't break, the other half will, and the other half can also break in other arbitrary ways already, just by someone defining their own type with a new implicit overload. Like if that wasn't double, if that was my struct, and the user decided they're going to add a new implicit conversion operator to my struct. It's the kind of the same scenario where implicit conversions can subtly break things in all kinds of ways.
Right, but that doesn't require that someone define a new struct and a new that requires just a numeric type array. People have those a lot.
Right, but
if
most
you have
people aren't calling array.fill.
I don't know that that's true. Most people who are writing new code probably are calling, or many people who are writing new code are probably calling span fill over array fill, but existing code exists and people probably don't have a reason to change it until they get a compiler error.
Right, but are we going to really block ourselves from ever being able to add new APIs with implicit conversions because people are relying on what's effectively a bad practice in the first place?
I don't know that I would say it's a
this isn't a
bad practice to call array fill
change.
with like a long array that you fill with an int value. Like people do that all the time. or a double array that you fill with an int value. People do that all the time.
They only do that where we have failed to expose the required set of overloads in the same release. Most places where we have the need to support multiple types, we make the explicit decision to try and add all of these subtypes at the same time to avoid these implicit conversion issues. Because we've been bitten in the past with things like math F, where in that case it would have been it wouldn't have been an error, it would have been a silent break, in that your source wouldn't have a warning and it would silently recompile in an undesired pattern.
So I do actually have a scenario where it compiles in an undesired pattern, unfortunately. I did on Jeremy, the example that you had, replace double array with U-long array, and then call fill of the array, comma 0. And it will take the int32 overload instead of the U-long overload.